What's up, Fellowship Greenville? Welcome to FG Nightly. Jim Thompson here again. Hope you guys are doing well today. I just want you guys to know that Charlie legally changed his name. We were having a staff-wide Zoom call the other day, and when Charlie was typing in his name, the R is beside the T, and he accidentally entered it in as Chatley, which we thought was a great granddad joke, but it turns out he just mistyped. So if you see him, make sure you address him by his new name, Chatley. And if you guys aren't using Zoom for like community groups or whatever, it's still a great idea to be in touch with people. Maybe you still have to do that for work. But we're big fans of Zoom around here, and it helped Charlie finally get the name that he's always wanted, Reverend Pastor Chatley. So we do hope that you guys are using Zoom. Maybe for your community groups, it's a great idea. We've got some people doing that. And so we want to always encourage you to community at a distance, even though it's kind of weird and kind of tough. In all of this, it is good to know that we're not alone. We want to remind you of that. But God's people have not been alone for all of redemptive history in the Bible. And so I just want to read a little story out of Exodus for you of a reminder of when Israel went through a tough time and God's unique provision for them in that tough time. So if you do want to follow along in your Bibles, this is Exodus chapter 1. If you just want to listen to it, this is a really fun story, really interesting story. Goes a little something like this, Exodus chapter 1, verse 7. The people of Israel were fruitful and increased greatly, and they multiplied, and they grew exceedingly strong so that the land was filled with them. So fruitful multiply language sounds like Genesis, sounds like the Garden of Eden. But there arose a new king over Egypt who did not know Joseph or the people of Israel. And he said to his people, "Behold, the people of Israel are too many and too mighty for us. Come, let's deal shrewdly with them, lest they multiply." Shrewdly is the same word for the snake in Genesis 3. "And if war breaks out, they might join our enemies and fight against us and purge us from the land." Verse 11, "Therefore the Egyptians set taskmasters over them to afflict them with heavy burdens. And they built for Pharaoh store cities, Pithon and Ramesses. But the more that Israel was oppressed, the more they multiplied, and the more they spread abroad. And the Egyptians were in dread of the people of Israel. So they ruthlessly made the people of Israel work as slaves and made their lives bitter with hard service in mortar and brick and all kinds of work in the field. And in all their work, they ruthlessly made them work as slaves." So God's people here are in a lot of trouble, oppression, slavery. They have a bad political leader who's kind of has some really annoying domestic policies that are pushing down on them. So Israel's in a tough space, and they know that they're in this together. So what's God going to do about it? Well, before God does something, look what the terrible political leader does. Exodus 1:15. "Then the king of Egypt, the Pharaoh, said to the Hebrew midwives, one of whom name was Shiphrah and the other Puah," don't ever name your kids that, "when you serve as a midwife to the Hebrew women and see them on the birth stool, if it's a son, you should kill him, and if it's a daughter, they should live. But the Hebrew midwives feared God, and they did not do as the king of Egypt commanded them, but they let the male children live. So the king of Egypt called the midwives and said, 'What are you doing? Why are you letting the male children live?' And the midwives said to Pharaoh, 'Well, the Hebrew women actually know how to have babies, and they're stronger than the Egyptian women, and they just push out the babies before the midwife gets there.' And so God dealt well with the midwives, and then the people multiplied, same word again, and they grew very strong. And because the Hebrew midwives feared God, God gave them families. And then Pharaoh commanded all the people, not just a special few people in his court, but all the people of Egypt. He said, this is the worst domestic policy ever. Every son born to the Hebrews, you should throw into the Nile River, but you should let every daughter live." And that's how chapter 1 ends, but there are no chapter breaks originally. So the next verse says, "Now there was somebody from the house of Levi who went and he took his wife, a Levite woman, and the woman conceived and she bore a son. And when she saw that he was a fine child, she hid him for 3 months. But when she could hide him no longer," imagine hiding and keeping quiet a 3-month-old child. "When she could hide him no longer, she took for him and made a basket of bulrushes and daubed it with pitch." Like she made this little boat. In fact, this is the word for ark from Genesis. She made this little boat and she put it in, she put it and placed it by the reeds near the riverbank. Now think when you read the Bible, why is this weird? She takes her baby and gently puts it in the river. That was the place of death for what Pharaoh was asking people to do. Now, if you know the rest of the story, this is Moses. Moses means to be drawn out of the water, and that's why his name is such. Eventually, Moses' sister comes and watches the little tiny ark float down the river, and the Pharaoh's daughter is out there cleaning herself and taking a bath and finds the baby Israelite boy and go, wow, this really is a beautiful baby. And this, like, you could Instagram this baby. This baby's so cute. And Moses' sister goes to Pharaoh's daughter and says, oh, you want me to find somebody to take care of the baby for you? And Pharaoh's daughter says, of course, I'd love for you to do that. And so there's this irony of provision that Moses' mom gets to raise him and gets to nurse him and gets to care for him in the middle of all this death and all this pain and all this slavery. God's doing this unique provision. And we know that this eventually leads to Moses leading God's people through a different kinds of water, the waters of the Red Sea, to bring them out to freedom. But here's what I want you guys to see, and hopefully this will be encouraging for you. Yes, these people were in it together, and they knew that they were in this thing together. But notice that God caused his hero to enter into death to bring life for his people. This is exactly what's happening. When Moses' mama makes this little ark, this little protection thing, this little boat for him and puts him in the Nile River, she's placing him into death. And resurrection is that he comes forth and leads his people out. So this could be the death and resurrection of Jesus. This could be the death and resurrection of God's people being set free eventually from slavery here. This could be the death and resurrection of your fears. That's you living in death. This could be the death and resurrection of sin that you live in, of something that you're addicted to. This could be the death right now of we just feel anxiety and we feel fear and we feel pressure and we're terrified and we don't know what this person says or this person says. What we have to do is we have to trust God that he knows how to get us in and through death and out the other side resurrected, because that's what he did for Jesus. So what God did for Jesus on Easter Sunday morning, he has promised to do for all of creation one day. And I think we get to taste that now. Whether it's one day in the new heavens and the new earth, or whether it's through a tough time in your marriage, or whether it's through this really dark and heavy and weighty season right now, God is not scared to get his hands dirty by entering into the dirt and the mess and the death so as to bring life out the other side. And to me, that's the kind of thing that helps sustain me in these weird times with this really interesting story right here. It doesn't matter what political leaders say or what political leaders try to do. It doesn't matter what stares us down or what fears kind of attack us or feel like really heavy on us. God is not scared. He's not scratching his head on his throne. And so we get to trust him for that. And that's a really annoying and beautiful and wonderful thing that we get to do. And he's that good and he's that trustworthy. And so we continue to encourage you to choose faith instead of fear and to be still and know that he is God all the time. We love you guys. Shalom. Oh yeah, I'm going to pull down the screen. Here we go. Go team.
There it is.